I never thought I'd be standing here, telling you this story. But trust me, after everything I've been through, I need you to hear it. My name is Audrey Thompson. I'm 30 years old, and the worst day of my life started with my brother slapping my 6-year-old daughter across the face. I can still hear the sound, the loud crack that echoed across the room, the stunned silence that followed, and the sick feeling in my stomach. It wasn't just the slap that shocked me. It was the fact that my father, Howard, smirked and said she needed to learn some shame. And my mother, Eleanor, she laughed along. They thought they were safe. They thought I would just stand there and take it like I always had, like I always was meant to. But not anymore. That moment, right there, was the turning point. I was done. But I wasn't done just with Derek, my golden child of a brother. Always praised. Always adored. No, I was done with everything. The lies, the manipulation, the way they treated me, the way they looked down on me like I wasn't even part of their family. I was going to show them something they never saw coming. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Audrey, why didn't you just leave? Why stay? I get it. Trust me. I have asked myself that question 1,000,000 times. But here's the thing. I've been running away my whole life. From Derek's success, from my parents' expectations, from their disappointment, and, most importantly, from the truth that I've been too scared to face. But that slap was the spark. And once the fire started, I wasn't going to let anyone stop it. Now, before I get into it, if you've ever been in a situation where you've felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to love you the most, hit that like button. Drop a comment if you've ever been the one who was ignored, belittled, or left to fend for yourself. And don't forget to subscribe, because you do not want to miss the rest of this story. Trust me on that. My life had always been a balancing act. You know how it is. You try to keep everyone happy while quietly falling apart on the inside. My family. They were perfect at that. The Thompsons. To the world, we were the ideal family. Successful father. Subtle. Graceful mother. Derek. My older brother, tall. Athletic. Charismatic, everything my parents wanted in a son. Then, there was me. Audrey. I was the other one. The one who didn't fit the mold. The one who questioned things. The one who couldn't make her life look as perfect as Derek's. From the outside, Derek and I had a pretty standard sibling dynamic. He was the star. I was the afterthought. I remember it well. Growing up, my father would always say, "You should be more like Derek." Audrey, why can't you be more like him? It was a broken record. Always Derek. Always better than me. I couldn't help it. I wasn't the one with a promising future in finance. I wasn't the one excelling in every aspect of life. I didn't have it all together like Derek did. And you know what? I was tired of it. Tired of living in his shadow. Tired of being invisible to my own parents. But nothing hurt more than the day I realized that they didn't even see me as a real person anymore. I'm not talking about when they didn't show up to my high school graduation or the countless events where I had to beg for their attention. I'm talking about when I got married. Jason, he was my escape. At the time, he was everything I needed. A kind, thoughtful man who saw me. Not Derek's perfect, flawless little sister. But me, we were young. Too young. Maybe I was 20 when we got married. Looking back, I can't believe it happened. But I was desperate to get out of that suffocating house. My parents attended my wedding. Sure, they showed up. But let's just say their smiles didn't exactly reach their eyes. They didn't care that Jason was my choice. They cared about how much he earned, whether his family had the right kind of background. It didn't matter that he loved me. They'd already decided, long before that day, that I wasn't good enough. And when Jason cheated on me, my parents didn't even have my back. Instead, my mom told me, "Men don't leave happy homes." Audrey, what did you do to push him away? I was so tired. Tired of always being the disappointment. Tired of being the problem child. But still, I clung to the idea that family should be there for you. That somehow, I still needed their approval. So when they invited me to that family reunion last summer, I decided to go. Maybe, just maybe, things could change. But that was the last mistake I ever made. We arrived at the lake house late Friday afternoon. My heart was already racing in my chest. I had my daughter, Lily. With me, she was all I cared about now. She was my whole world. I'd promised her, "I'm going to give you the life I never had." But as we pulled into the long driveway of the Thompson estate, this house, so grand, so perfect on the outside, I could already feel the weight of what was to come. Derek's BMW sat parked next to my parents' Mercedes, looking like they'd won some kind of family competition. Lily bounced in her seat, full of excitement. Will Uncle Derek be there? And Grandma and Grandpa? And can I swim in the lake every day? She didn't even notice my anxiety. She was innocent, just happy to be with family. But I wasn't. I never was. As we walked up to the front door, I could hear my mother's voice, crisp, almost cold, as she greeted us. "Audrey, you made it." She barely looked at me, her eyes immediately scanning Lily. Of course, Lily was the only one worth acknowledging in this family. The moment we stepped inside, I was hit with that familiar suffocating feeling. Derek and his wife, Natalie, stood in the kitchen, chatting like the perfect couple. He shot me a glance, the kind you give someone you've already judged and written off. But it wasn't the usual cold reception that threw me off. It was what happened next. As we settled in, I saw Derek pull Lily aside by the dock. He knelt down, leaned in too close to her, and said something under his breath. I couldn't hear it, but I saw the way she flinched. She was terrified. I could feel the blood rush to my face. That was it. That was the moment everything broke. I walked straight over to them. Derek stood up, looking surprised. He looked me dead in the eyes. And that's when I realized he knew exactly what he was doing. And I wasn't going to let it happen. But I wasn't going to just confront him. No. This time, I had a different plan. A plan that would change everything. The house stood tall and imposing. The towering oak trees lining the long driveway almost seemed like sentinels guarding its secrets. The place looked like something out of a magazine, perfectly manicured lawns, stone pillars, and the kind of architectural elegance that screamed money, tradition, and power. Every inch of it spoke of success, and that made it harder for me to breathe. It had always been that way. As I walked through the front door of the Thompson family home, I felt a familiar knot form in my stomach. The air was thick, heavy with the weight of history. This was where I had spent the majority of my life trying and failing to meet impossible expectations. This was my family, but it never felt like home. My father, Howard Thompson, a corporate attorney with a reputation as solid as the marble floors of his foyer, was standing by the fireplace, deep in conversation with my Uncle Robert. He didn't even look up when I entered. His focus was on something far more important than his daughter. Probably something to do with stocks or some deal. For him, his work was everything. "Ah, Audrey." My mother Eleanor greeted me, her voice smooth, like the perfectly pressed linen pants she wore even in the heat of summer. She hugged Lily first. Of course, a warm, almost overbearing gesture. "Yeah, It's so good to see you. Darling, how was the drive? I nodded, a forced smile tugging at my lips. It was fine. Mom. I could feel her eyes scanning me. The same critical gaze she'd had since I was a kid. Never enough. Never good enough. It wasn't like she hated me. I don't think. It was more like I didn't fit into the perfect little puzzle she had carefully arranged in her mind. I was the piece that never quite snapped into place. Is Derek here? I asked, my voice louder than I intended. The air was too thick for me to breathe, and I wanted to change the subject, anything to break this suffocating silence. Of course, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. He's upstairs with Natalie. Derek, my older brother, who had always been the golden child. He was everything our parents wanted: smart, successful, athletic, with a perfect wife, Natalie, who came from a family just as affluent and perfectly polished as ours. Derek was the kind of son you'd brag about at dinner parties, the one who got the prestigious job right out of college, who closed big deals before even breaking 30. He was a financial whiz. And to Dad, Derek was the pride of the family. And me? Well, I had always been the disappointment. I tried to push those thoughts away as Lily ran ahead of me, eager to find her cousins. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still that awkward, overlooked girl who had to beg for attention. And it wasn't just from my parents. It was from everyone. Walking into the living room, I saw Derek and Natalie talking near the window, their laughter bright, easy. They looked so perfect together. A part of me wanted to be happy for them, genuinely happy. But another part of me resented it. I resented their ease, their perfection. Lily bounced up to me, excitement dancing in her blue eyes. Mom, Uncle Derek and Aunt Natalie said I could swim in the lake, she exclaimed, her voice full of that pure, childlike joy that I had long since lost. Good, I said, trying to smile. Go have fun. I watched her skip off toward the backyard, where the lake glittered like a silver mirror in the late afternoon sun. For a brief moment, I thought about how simple things used to be for me too, before I had learned how to wear the mask that my family expected. I stood there, my heart racing, trying to keep the facade up. But as soon as Lily was out of sight, I felt it again, the familiar, gnawing sense of isolation. The dinner table that night was nothing new. It was filled with fake smile, polite conversations, and the quiet hum of clinking silverware. My parents chatted with their friends, ignoring the fact that their daughter was sitting across from them like a ghost. Derek, of course, was the star of the show, regaling everyone with tales of his latest business trip and the deals he'd brokered. Derek, you're doing such important work, my father said, his voice full of pride. I always knew you'd make something of yourself. My mother nodded in agreement, her eyes shining. Yes, you've really made us proud. And I see you've made some good connections. That's what matters. Dear, I felt my chest tighten as I looked at them, but I forced myself to smile. I'm happy for you, Derek, I said, my voice flat. Really? Derek shot me a glance that was at once condescending and smug. Thanks, Audrey. It's been a lot of hard work. But someone has to step up. Right. Someone has to step up. Those words stung in ways Derek could never understand. I had stepped up for years. I had tried, in my own way, to build something for myself. But it had never been enough. I excused myself from the table, unable to listen to another word of their praise. I didn't belong here. As I stood in the quiet hallway, my mind raced. I had to get out of here. I couldn't stay one more second, pretending that I was happy for them. But more than that, I couldn't keep pretending that I wasn't angry. That anger was building up inside me like a storm, and I knew it wouldn't be long before I couldn't control it anymore. After dinner, I found myself sitting in the living room, staring out at the lake, my mind working overtime. This house, this family, all of it had always been so perfect. The gleaming furniture, the spotless countertops, the crisp white curtains that looked like they belonged in a showroom. Everything was about appearances. Everything was about pretending. I could hear the sounds of laughter from outside, where Derek and Natalie were talking with my parents by the dock, but I couldn't join them. I couldn't stand it. And then, just as I was about to stand up and leave the room, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There, by the dock, Derek was speaking to Lily, but it wasn't just a casual conversation. I saw him lean down, his hand on her shoulder, whispering something in her ear. She flinched. Her body stiffened. And for a moment, I thought she might cry. I stood frozen. What the hell was he saying to her? Without thinking, I pushed myself up from the couch and walked quickly toward the door. But before I could reach it, I heard Derek's voice, sharp and cutting. You don't want to be loud. Lily, it's not cute. People don't like that. Especially not men. My heart stopped. My heart was hammering in my chest as I stood frozen in the doorway, watching Derek lean in even closer to Lily. My breath caught in my throat as he whispered something to her. Her body stiffened, her face twisted with confusion and fear. And then, she flinched. It wasn't the physical distance that bothered me. It was the look on her face, the fear that flashed across it for a second, the same fear I had felt my whole life. I couldn't let it go on. I couldn't stand there and watch my daughter, my only light in this suffocating world, be manipulated and silenced by the same person who had spent his whole life making me feel worthless. I stepped forward, my legs feeling like they were made of lead. Each step felt heavier, more deliberate than the last, as if my body knew what I was about to do before my mind could catch up. I felt the air grow thicker with every inch I took toward that damn dock. Just as I reached the doorway, Derek's voice rang out, sharper than ever, his words slicing through the evening air. You don't want to be loud. Lily, it's not cute. People don't like that. Especially not men. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear him apart for saying that to her, for making her feel like her voice wasn't welcome, that her existence wasn't welcome. But instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I took a deep breath, and I walked out. The sound of my heels clicking on the wooden floor was the only noise I could hear in the suffocating silence of my mind. But inside, I was a storm. I was shaking with rage, my chest tight with that familiar feeling, the one that had lived in me for so long. It had become part of my DNA. I stopped just behind Derek, my breath steady, but my voice trembling with the anger I could no longer contain. Derek, what the hell did you just say to my daughter? He looked up at me, that cocky, self-assured grin plastered on his face. Oh, come on, Audrey. She's just being a little brat. I'm teaching her some discipline. You know? The kind of stuff you never bothered to do. His eyes flicked to Lily, who was now standing there, her small body trembling with confusion. The moment his gaze fell on her, I felt the surge of protection rise up in me like an animal instinct. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I placed myself between Derek and Lily. No, I said firmly. No, you don't get to talk to her like that. You don't get to talk to anyone like that. Derek stepped back, clearly taken aback by the sudden shift in my tone. For a moment, I thought maybe I had finally caught him off guard. Maybe he was seeing me as more than the invisible sister who always played by the rules. But then, his expression hardened. He crossed his arms, that smug look creeping back onto his face. Please, Audrey, stop being so dramatic. It's just a little joke. You used to love jokes like this when you were younger. His voice was condescending, dismissive just like it always had been. Maybe if you had a sense of humor, you wouldn't be so uptight. The irony of his words hit me like a slap. Uptight. The world he lived in had no place for people who weren't ready to play by his rules, who weren't willing to let him win without question. I saw the twisted look in his eyes. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't even remotely aware of the damage he was causing. He was a product of the world my parents had built for him. The world where success was measured by the amount of money in your bank account, where your worth was tied to how well you could mold the people around you into your idea of perfect. But I wasn't going to be one of his puppets anymore. I turned to Lily, who was now standing beside me, her tiny hand clutching the hem of my shirt. I knelt down, looking her in the eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to listen to anything he says. You're perfect just the way you are. You hear me?" She nodded silently, her wide blue eyes full of uncertainty. It broke my heart. "Mom," she whispered, her voice small. "Why is Uncle Derek mad?" Why? Because that's how it had always been. He had always been mad at me, at the world, at everyone who didn't play along with his game. But now it was Lily, and I couldn't stand it. I wouldn't let it happen. I stood up, a new sense of purpose building inside me. I wasn't going to just stand there and take it anymore. I wasn't going to let my daughter grow up in a world where the people who were supposed to protect her were the very ones who hurt her. I took a deep breath and turned to Derek one last time. "You don't get to speak to her like that again. If you have a problem with me, fine. But don't you ever raise your voice at my daughter again." His smirk faltered for a moment, but then it was back, like it never left. "Whatever. Audrey, you always were the dramatic one," he muttered under his breath, turning to walk away. But I could see it in his eyes. He didn't know what to make of me anymore. He was used to me being the quiet, obedient sister, the one who took whatever came her way without question. But now, I wasn't afraid anymore. The next few hours were a blur. Lily and I spent the evening alone in my room, away from the chaos downstairs. But even though the night seemed peaceful, I couldn't shake the sense that things were about to escalate. I was done with the way Derek treated me. Done with the way my parents pretended nothing was wrong. Nothing was ever their fault. Done with being the invisible sister. But I knew I needed more than just anger. I needed a plan. I sat down at the desk in my room, my mind whirring with possibilities. This wasn't just about confronting Derek anymore. It was about taking back control. About standing up for myself in a way I had never dared to before. I wasn't just going to fight for myself. I was going to fight for Lily. For the life we deserved. The silence in my room was deafening. The kind of silence that settled like dust on your skin, making you feel trapped. Like you couldn't breathe. It had been hours since Derek's smug, condescending remarks. Since he made Lily flinch, and my heart twist with a rage I hadn't felt in years. And yet, here I was sitting alone, waiting for something to click, for the plan that was swirling in my mind to form into something solid, something real. It wasn't just about Derek anymore, or my parents, who had always been so blind to the damage they'd caused. It wasn't even about me, though I would never admit it aloud. No. It was about Lily. It was about her growing up in a world where people like Derek, people with power and privilege, felt entitled to crush her spirit. And I would not let that happen. Not now. Not ever. I had spent years running from my anger, hiding from it, hoping it would fade. But I couldn't do it anymore. I was done being the overlooked, underappreciated daughter, the sister who never quite measured up. And Derek, he had just crossed a line. He thought he could intimidate my daughter. He thought he could make her shrink. Well, he had no idea what he was about to unleash. I turned my focus to the window, watching the last traces of sunlight disappear behind the distant trees. It was now or never. I took a deep breath and pulled my laptop toward me. I wasn't just sitting there anymore, letting the anger fester. I was doing something about it. The idea had started as a small thought, just a fleeting notion of retribution. But as I sat there, it evolved. A plan. A strategy. This wasn't just going to be about calling Derek out in front of everyone at dinner. This was bigger than that. I knew I couldn't take down Derek in a simple confrontation. Not with the family we had. Not with how deep his influence ran. I needed leverage. I needed something solid. Something he couldn't wriggle out of. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't thought about in years. Uncle Joe. Uncle Joe had always been a bit of a black sheep in the family. While everyone else was wrapped up in their own perfect little worlds, Joe had spent his life making his own rules. He'd gotten into trouble before nothing serious. Just a few run-ins with the law for protesting corporate corruption. But the thing about Joe was that he was smart. Really smart. He had a way of seeing the truth when no one else did. And as much as my family tried to shut him out, he knew things they didn't want anyone to find out. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Joe," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help." There was a pause on the other end. "Audrey, what's going on?" "I need you to find something for me. I need dirt on Derek. Something I can use to bring him down. Something real." Joe's voice dropped an octave. "You're in deeper than you think. Kid, what are you trying to do?" "I'm going to expose him," I said, the words falling from my lips before I could stop them. "I'm done being quiet. Done letting him walk all over me. This time, I'm taking control." There was silence for a beat. Then Joe sighed, a resigned sound. "I've got some connections. You'll have what you need by tomorrow." I hung up, feeling a surge of relief wash over me. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next day, things in the Thompson house felt different. It was like walking into a storm that hadn't fully broken yet. There was an eerie calm before the chaos. Derek was still being his usual self, roaming the house with that perfect, unbothered smile of his. But I could see the cracks forming. He didn't know it yet, but the ground beneath his feet was shifting, and he wasn't going to know what hit him. Lily and I stayed in my room most of the day. She was happy to be away from the constant buzz of family noise. But I could see the shadows in her eyes, the same ones I'd had when I was her age. She didn't know how to protect herself yet. She didn't know how to shield her heart from people who were supposed to love her. But I did. And I wasn't going to let her suffer the way I had. Around dinner time, I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. "Joe, Audrey." His voice came through the phone, tight with urgency. "I've got it. Derek's been involved in some shady business dealings. He's been laundering money through some questionable investments, big ones. And I've got the evidence. You're going to need to act fast." My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the weapon I needed. The thing that would shatter the perfect facade Derek had been hiding behind all these years. I spent the next few hours going over the files. Joe sent me emails, bank statements, transaction records. The more I dug, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. I had what I needed. The proof that Derek wasn't the golden boy he appeared to be. But it wasn't enough just to expose him. I needed to make sure he couldn't wriggle out of this. I needed to make a statement that couldn't be ignored. And I had the perfect idea. I waited until everyone gathered for dinner. Derek, as usual, was the center of attention, telling stories about his latest deal. charming everyone in the room with his confidence and self-assuredness. I watched him with a tight jaw, my hands gripping the edge of the table. Lily sat quietly beside me, occasionally stealing glances at Derek, still unsure of how to act around him. It made my heart ache, seeing her so confused by the man who should have been protecting her. I reached over and gently placed my hand on hers, squeezing it for comfort. As the conversation continued around me, I could feel the tension building. It was like a pressure cooker about to explode, and I was ready to turn up the heat. "Everyone," I said, my voice calm but cutting through the noise of the room. "I have something I need to share, something that can't wait." The room went quiet. My parents looked at me in surprise. Derek's expression faltered, and even Natalie looked up from her plate. This wasn't just a family dinner anymore. This was my battlefield. I took a deep breath and pulled out the first set of documents from my purse. "I've been doing some digging, and I think you should all know about Derek's perfect business deals." I slid the papers across the table toward him, my eyes never leaving his. "Let's talk about the money, Derek. Let's talk about where it really comes from." The silence in the room was suffocating. My parents stared at me, their eyes wide with confusion, disbelief. Derek's face was a mask of arrogance, the smirk on his lips barely visible now. He knew exactly what I was doing, and for the first time in years, I could see the cracks in his perfect little world. I slid the documents across the table, watching as they slowly made their way to him. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting. And then, Derek reached for them. His fingers grazed the paper for just a second, before he jerked his hand back like it had been burned. He looked up at me, eyes narrowing. "Really, Audrey," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think these are going to do anything? This is nothing. Just some paperwork. Some paperwork someone could have easily faked. This isn't going to hurt me." I wasn't fazed by his words, not for a second. This was bigger than just a few documents. This was about me, about taking back control of my life, about showing Derek and my parents that I wasn't going to be the quiet little sister anymore. "Go ahead," I said, my voice steady. "Check the detail. Dig through it. But trust me, Derek, you won't be able to explain this one away." He hesitated, just for a moment. His fingers hovered over the papers, his expression flickering between disbelief and anger. But then, just as quickly as it came, the flicker was gone. He scooped up the papers, holding them out to my parents. "This is just a distraction," he muttered, his voice rising. "She's just trying to make something out of nothing. She's been bitter for years, and now she's—" "Enough." My father's voice cut through the tension, sharp and commanding. His tone wasn't angry, but the disapproval in it was unmistakable. "Audrey, what is this? What are you trying to do?" I stood my ground, my heart pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. "I'm trying to do what you've never done," I said. "I'm trying to show you who Derek really is. The person you've been turning a blind eye to for years. The person who has been hiding in plain sight, using all of you, using all of us for his own gain." I could feel the weight of my words in the room, could see the uncertainty creeping into my parents' faces. This was it. I could either break them or save them, but it didn't matter anymore. I wasn't doing this for them. I was doing this for Lily. "Derek," I said, locking eyes with him, "this is it. The end of your perfect little game. You've been lying to everyone. You've been playing with people's lives. And it's time to pay the price." His eyes darkened, the arrogance gone, replaced with something more dangerous, something far more real. "Don't," he warned, his voice dropping. You don't know what you're messing with. You have no idea what's at stake here. I stood taller, a fire burning in my chest. Oh, I know exactly what I'm messing with, and I'm not backing down. Not anymore. The next few hours were a blur. The initial shock had worn off, replaced with a tense silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Derek had tried to deflect, tried to downplay what I had revealed, but he couldn't avoid it anymore. The cracks in his carefully constructed facade were wide open. My parents were still in shock, unsure of how to react. They knew there was truth in what I had said, but they couldn't bring themselves to admit it. Not yet. I could see the storm brewing, the tension rising. It wasn't just about the documents anymore. It was about control, about how much longer Derek could keep everyone under his thumb, how much longer he could manipulate them all into believing he was the golden boy. As I sat in my room later that night, staring at the lake outside, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. This was it. The moment I had been building up to. The moment that would change everything. I wasn't just going to let Derek fall. I was going to make sure everyone knew who he really was. I was going to make sure that when the dust settled, there was no way he could worm his way out of this. I took out my phone, my fingers moving quickly over the screen as I set up the final piece of my plan. It wasn't enough to expose him to my parents. It wasn't enough to simply call him out at the dinner table. This had to be public. The world had to see Derek for who he really was. I called Joe again. Audrey. His voice sounded strained, like he knew what was coming. What do you need? I need your help one last time, I said, my voice low but steady. We're going to bring this all to light. I want you to set up a meeting. Get a few key players involved. I don't care how you do it, but we need to make this public. I want Derek's lies to be exposed to the world. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he might back out. But then he spoke. I'll make the arrangements, he said, his voice firm. But you need to be ready. Once we do this, there's no going back. I took a deep breath, staring out the window as the weight of his words settled on me. There would be no turning back. Once this was done, Derek's world would crumble, and mine would never be the same. But it was the only way. The next day, everything was set in motion. The meeting Joe had arranged was scheduled. I had sent the documents to a few trusted people who could help take down Derek's empire. People who knew how to expose corruption at the highest levels. This wasn't just about his personal life. It was about the empire he had built on lies, on manipulation, on people's suffering. Derek, of course, had no idea what was coming. He thought this would all blow over. He thought he could bury the truth, like he had done so many times before, but I wasn't going to let him. Not now. Not ever. As I sat in the meeting room, waiting for the others to arrive, my thoughts raced. This was the final step, the moment I had been waiting for. And then, my heart raced, and my breath caught in my throat as I saw the figure standing in the doorway. The last person I ever expected to walk in. It wasn't Derek. It wasn't any of the people I had arranged to meet. It was my mother, Eleanor Thompson. I stood there, frozen, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. My mother had never been part of these high-stakes meetings, never involved in the kind of business dealings that I had planned to expose. She was always the perfect, poised woman behind the scenes, the one who held the family together with her iron grip, the one who maintained the illusion of perfection. So why was she here? My mind raced. Memories flashing through my head. Those family gatherings where I could never quite shake the feeling that something was off. The way she always smiled when things were going right. The way she shut down every uncomfortable conversation. Always careful to avoid confrontation. But today, she wasn't smiling. Her usual calm demeanor was replaced by a look of complete surprise, her gaze darting from me to the others in the room. I could tell she hadn't expected to be caught in the middle of this, just like I hadn't expected her to show up at all. What is this?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying a sharp edge of confusion. "Why are all these people here? What's going on?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. It was impossible to ignore the weight of her presence, but I couldn't back down now. "Mom, this is it," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, though the storm inside me was growing. "This is the truth. The truth about Derek and everything he's been hiding." She looked around the room, her eyes flicking nervously to the others who had gathered. Some of them strangers, others acquaintances from high-level business dealings. They were all watching her now, watching us. And just like that, the calmness she always exuded started to crack. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice rising slightly, more defensive than I had ever heard it. "This isn't the way to handle this. Audrey, you don't know what you're doing." I took a step toward her, my heart hammering in my chest. "No. Mom, you don't know what you're doing. This isn't just about Derek anymore. It's about everything this family's built on. The lies, the manipulation, the way we've all been pawns in his game." I saw her stiffen, the familiar look of controlled panic flickering across her face. She didn't like to be challenged. She didn't like to have her perfect little world disrupted. But this time, I wasn't going to let her control the narrative. I turned to the others in the room, making sure they knew I wasn't backing down. "We're here today to show everyone who Derek really is. To show how he's been using his position, his power, to get away with things that none of us should ignore." But before anyone could speak, my mother finally found her voice again. "You're ruining everything," she said sharply, her voice trembling with a mix of frustration and fear. "This isn't the way. You're just jealous of what Derek's built. You've always been jealous of him, Audrey. And now you're going to destroy this family for it." I could feel the weight of her words, the same words I had heard all my life. Jealous. It was always the same. I wasn't good enough. I was too angry, too resentful, and in the end, I was the one ruining everything. But I wasn't going to let her twist it anymore. Not today. "No." "Mom," I said, my voice low and steady, cutting through her words. "I'm not jealous. I'm done being the one who gets left behind, the one who doesn't count. I'm done being invisible. I'm doing this for Lily. She deserves better than what Derek represents." I could see my mother's face fall, the realization of what was happening starting to sink in. She knew, deep down, that I wasn't just talking about Derek. This was about me, about everything I had been forced to swallow for years. The jealousy, the anger, the shame. It was all there, beneath the surface, ready to explode. And now, there was no turning back. Derek, who had been standing silently at the back of the room, his arm crossed tightly across his chest, suddenly spoke up. His voice was cold, tinged with annoyance. "You really think this is going to change anything, Audrey?" His smirk was back, the arrogance so familiar it made my blood boil. "You think you can just tear everything down and expect it all to fall apart? You're nothing but a bitter, failed, what? Sister, daughter. You've always been nothing." His words stung, but they also gave me the clarity I needed. This wasn't just about proving something to him. It was about proving something to myself. I wasn't his pawn anymore. I wasn't anyone's pawn. "No, Derek," I said, my voice steady, my gaze locked on him. "You're the one who's nothing. You built this empire on lies, and I'm going to make sure everyone sees that. This isn't just a family problem. It's a public problem. And you're not getting away with it anymore. There was a brief pause. A flicker of something that looked like fear crossed Derek's face. For the first time in my life, I saw him falter. It was the slightest shift. A crack in his perfect armor. And just when I thought I had him cornered, when I thought I'd finally pushed him into a place where there was no escape, the door swung open again. And this time, it wasn't just anyone who entered. It was Paul, my brother-in-law. And in his hands, he was holding something that could change everything. The room felt suffocating. My heart was pounding in my chest, the sound of it loud and jarring against the thick silence. Paul, standing in the doorway, was holding the one thing I hadn't expected, the thing that would unravel Derek's carefully constructed world. He had a thick envelope in his hands, the kind of envelope that spoke of power, of secrets ready to be spilled. Paul, what the hell is this? Derek snapped, his face hardening as his eyes fixed on the envelope. He was trying to mask the panic that I could see flickering just beneath the surface. But it was there. Derek, the golden boy, was rattled. Paul walked in slowly, his gaze flicking between Derek and me. He didn't say a word, just placed the envelope on the table. His silence spoke volumes. Derek's eyes darted between the envelope and me, his face growing paler by the second. "This is ridiculous," he said, trying to sound confident, but I could hear the unease in his voice. "What do you think this is going to do? You think you've won?" I could feel the anger, the tension, building inside me. But this wasn't about winning. This was about something far deeper. This was about justice. This was about the years of silence, the years of being the invisible sister, the one who was always brushed aside, ignored, discarded. And now it was my turn. It was Lily's turn. Paul took a step forward, his voice calm but firm. "This, Derek, is your undoing. These documents, the ones you've been so careful to hide, they tell a different story. A story no one has been able to connect until now." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I've seen the numbers. I've seen the deals. Your empire, it's built on nothing but lies." For a split second, I saw Derek's face fall. The facade he had built up for years, that smug confidence, that perfect little world, cracked. But then he quickly recovered, putting on that cold, calculating expression that was his trademark. "I don't know what you think you found, Paul," Derek said, his tone now clipped and defensive. "But you can't take me down. None of this matters. I've built everything. Everything you all have is because of me." I could see the desperation creeping into his words, that same desperation I had always felt beneath the surface. Derek's empire wasn't built on integrity. It wasn't built on hard work. It was built on manipulation, deceit, and the way he had always been able to make people believe in his lies. But not anymore. Not today. Your empire is a house of cards. "Derek," I said, my voice steady but filled with the truth I had been holding back for so long. "And I'm about to watch it fall." Derek's eyes flickered with a mix of disbelief and rage. He opened his mouth to say something, probably to fight back, to throw the same accusations at me that he had thrown all my life, but I cut him off. "No. This time, you're not getting away with it. Not when I have the proof." I took a deep breath, turning to my parents, who had been eerily quiet throughout the entire confrontation. I could see the disappointment, the guilt starting to sink in. My mother, who had always supported Derek, was now staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "Dad." "Mom," I said, my voice softer, though no less firm. Do you see him for who he really is now? Do you see the lies he's been telling us all for years? The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the weight of it in their eyes. They had built their lives around Derek, around his success. But now, the cracks in their perfect image of him were too big to ignore. They had no choice but to see the truth, whether they liked it or not. I didn't want to believe it. My father finally spoke, his voice trembling slightly. I didn't want to see it, but this is too much. And then, for the first time in what felt like forever, I saw something in my father's eyes that I had never seen before. Regret. The kind of regret that comes from realizing you've been complicit in a lie for far too long. My mother didn't speak. She couldn't. She just sat there, her face pale, her hands trembling as she stared at Derek, her son, the golden boy who could do no wrong, who had just been exposed for everything he was. Derek's expression flickered. For a brief moment, I saw him lose control. But then he quickly regained his composure, his anger bubbling to the surface. He slammed his hands onto the table, causing the papers to shift. "You're making a huge mistake, Audrey," he spat, his voice low and dangerous. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. You think these documents will destroy me? You think exposing me is going to end well for you?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "No, Derek, I'm not just exposing you. I'm exposing everything. Your lies, your manipulation, your empire of deceit. And it's not just for me. It's for everyone you've hurt along the way." I paused, my eyes scanning the room, making sure they all understood the gravity of what was happening. I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing this for every person who had been silenced by Derek's arrogance, for every person he had crushed beneath his boot to climb higher. This was for them. I'm not the one who's going down. "Derek," I said quietly. "You are." As Derek sat there, seething with rage, I couldn't help but notice how quickly his world was starting to crumble. The walls he had spent years building up, the walls of lies and manipulation, were now falling down around him. I could see the fear in his eyes now, the desperation. For the first time in a long time, Derek didn't have control. "Get out," he hissed. "Get out of my house. All of you. Now." But it was too late. I turned to Paul, who had been standing silently by my side. He gave me a nod, the kind of nod that told me everything was already in motion. "I'm done here," I said to Derek, my voice cold. "You've lost. We all see you now. The world will see you for who you are. And when it's all over, don't expect anyone to come to your rescue." I walked out of the room, my heart pounding. But there was no turning back now. I had taken control. I had finally broken free from the chains that had held me hostage for so long. And as I stepped into the hallway, I turned to look at my parents one last time. They were still sitting there, staring at Derek, their world shattered. But they had a choice now. They could choose to see the truth, or they could choose to continue living in the illusion they had built. It was up to them. Story 2. It's funny how life can take you by surprise. 1 minute, you're just going along, minding your own business. And the next, everything flips on its head. That's exactly what happened to me. I'm Olivia Matthews, 32 years old, and nothing could have prepared me for what happened at my brother Jason's wedding. Now, before I go any further, I need you to understand something. I've been the responsible one in the family, the one who never gets the praise, the one who works tirelessly behind the scenes. And for years, I let it slide. I let my brother Jason, the golden child, get all the glory. I worked 60-hour weeks at our family business, Matthews Construction, to keep the company afloat. Meanwhile, Jason, he had the charisma, the charm, and the ease that made him the family favorite. But when it came to our family business, Jason was about as involved as a pretty face in a board meeting. Yet somehow, he always got the credit. It was all fine. Until it wasn't. And that until came at his wedding. Picture this. I walk into the venue, looking to just get through this day, trying to be supportive. The air is thick with champagne and perfume. Guests in tailored suits and gowns weave around me like dancers in an expensive waltz. But the moment I walk in, something's off. You see, the problem wasn't the wedding itself. It was the moment I walked into the reception and was told to take a seat. Not at the family table, mind you, but in the kitchen, right next to the catering staff. And this wasn't just a mistake. No, this was deliberate. They thought I wouldn't notice, but I did. Pause. The worst part. My family didn't even bat an eye. My mother smiled that practiced, empty smile of hers and said, "Oh, Olivia, we figured you'd be more comfortable here. You know, with your, business sense." It hit me like a slap in the face. But that's when it started. That's when I decided to take back control of my life. I wasn't just going to sit there like I'd done for years, quietly watching everyone else get ahead while I kept the lights on for them. No, I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. Before I dive into how I turned my brother's world upside down, let me ask you something. Have you ever been dismissed, overlooked, or even humiliated by the people who should have had your back? If so, hit that like button, comment your story below, and subscribe for what happens next. Trust me, you won't want to miss how I changed everything that day. I was never supposed to be the successful one in the family. From the very beginning, I was the one who had to fight for recognition. Jason. He walked through life effortlessly. Tall, charming, with an easy smile that made everyone want to be around him. On the other hand, was practical, responsible, the boring one. My mom used to say, "Olivia is good with numbers." That was code for, she's not the fun one. She's the one who keeps the company from going bankrupt. And Jason, he was the real success in the family's eyes, even though he did nothing more than go to the occasional business dinner and look good doing it. His job, Vice President of Client Relations. In other words, he charmed clients and partners into believing they were lucky to be working with Matthews Construction. But here's the thing. While Jason was busy playing golf and attending charity dinners, I was the one who had to crunch the numbers, negotiate contracts, and make sure our bottom line stayed afloat. And yet, every time I pointed out how much of the load I carried, my dad would just wave it off. "Olivia, your brother brings in the business. That's just as important as your behind-the-scenes work." I guess my behind-the-scenes work didn't count. I was always just the responsible one, the practical one, the invisible one. And then there was the wedding. Jason's wedding to Vanessa Caldwell. You have to understand something about the Caldwells. They weren't just another wealthy family. They were practically royalty in the business world. Vanessa's father, Richard Caldwell, ran Caldwell Properties, one of the largest luxury real estate development companies in the country. For 3 years, Matthews Construction had held an exclusive contract with Caldwell Properties, a deal I had personally negotiated. It was a huge win for our family business, and the kind of deal that should have solidified my position. But when Jason announced his engagement to Vanessa, I could feel the shift in the air. Suddenly, all those years of hard work, all those sacrifices, didn't matter. The Caldwells were going to change everything. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was just wedding nerves. Or maybe I was being paranoid. But it didn't take long for the whispers to start. During the engagement party, held at the Caldwell estate, a sprawling mansion that could have fit our family's house inside it 100 times over. I overheard Vanessa's mother, Caroline, talking about how Matthew's construction had potential, but how our small-town mentality needed fixing. I slipped away before they saw me, telling myself they were just being elitist. But something inside me snapped. So, I started paying attention. Vanessa was polite enough when she talked to me, but I could see through her mask. She wasn't interested in being a part of our family. She was interested in taking over. I could feel the gears of their plan grinding into place. They wanted more than just a wedding. They wanted our company. And that's when I realized something. If I didn't act now, Jason and the Caldwells would strip me of everything I had worked for. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. This was about my future. And I was done letting them walk all over me. Next, I'll show you exactly how I pulled the rug out from under Jason and the Caldwells, and how I set my plan into motion. You won't believe how far I had to go to get back what was mine. Stay tuned. The day of Jason's engagement party felt like an invitation to my own personal hell. The atmosphere was suffocating, and I could practically hear the hollow laughter of my family as they gushed about the union of two wealthy, well-connected families. I walked into the Caldwell estate, a mansion that could have fit my entire childhood home inside it. I felt out of place, a small-town girl in a world of high society. I could hear the chatter and clinking of glasses echoing as I stepped into the grand hall, but none of it felt real. It was all too perfect, too staged. The marble floors gleamed under the chandeliers, and the air smelled faintly of expensive perfume and the faintest touch of something fake. "Olivia," my mother called from across the room, her voice overly cheerful. She had her arms stretched out, like she was welcoming a long-lost child. "Come say hello to everyone. You look so nice tonight." I plastered on a smile, even though my stomach churned. My mother, always the dutiful wife, always smiling as if everything was perfect. The facade of our family, held together by a string of expectations that she was happy to uphold. The perfect daughter who had everything under control. The perfect son who could do no wrong. But that night, I was neither of those things. I was the forgotten one. Jason, my charming, ever so perfect brother, stood in the center of the room, surrounded by guests. His grin was wide, almost too wide, as he shook hands and made everyone laugh with one of his endless, effortless stories. He was everything I was not. It didn't matter that I had spent countless hours building our family business from the ground up, fixing the messes he left behind, or securing our biggest contracts. No, Jason's smile, his natural charisma, were enough to overshadow all of that. When he saw me, he raised an eyebrow, his smile turning a bit too smug. "Liv, you actually showed up," he teased, his voice dripping with that familiar condescension. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat. Of course, I did. "It's a big day for you, isn't it?" He gave a half-hearted chuckle. "Well, I just thought you might have been too busy with spreadsheets," he said, motioning dismissively with a wave of his hand. He wasn't wrong, of course. I had been busy. I was always busy. But it was never acknowledged. It wasn't a win to them. To them, I was just a tool. A means to an end. The guests around him laughed lightly. He was the life of the party, just as he always had been. And I was the invisible one. It stung more than I wanted to admit. But the worst part, it wasn't just Jason's disregard for me. No, it was Vanessa's mother, Caroline, the queen bee of the Caldwell family, who approached me with her usual cold smile, the smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Olivia, dear," she said, her eyes sweeping over me like I was a relic from the past. "It's so lovely to see you again. You must be thrilled for Jason. This wedding is such a big step for all of us. Don't you think?" I bit my lip, fighting the urge to say something biting, something that would put her in her place. But instead, I just nodded, my jaw tight. "Yes. It's a big day. You know," she continued, her tone light, but dripping with passive aggression. "We've been thinking about the future, about all the possibilities this union will bring. For both families, it's all very exciting, isn't it?" The implications hung in the air like a fog. I could see where this was going. The Caldwells had no interest in simply joining our family. They were looking to take over. And Vanessa. She was the perfect pawn in their game. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer just watching a wedding. I was watching my own downfall. I could feel my pulse quicken. I turned away from Caroline, trying to keep my composure. But then I saw something that made my blood run cold. Jason, standing there with Vanessa, laughing and mingling with the guests, casually mentioned our business, Matthew's Construction. He was talking as if it were his own. The company I had spent the last decade building. The company I had kept afloat while Jason played the part of a charming businessman. "We're going to take Matthew's Construction to new heights. You know," Jason said with that same smug grin. "The Caldwells have some exciting plans for the future. Big changes coming. Folks, big changes." I thought, clenching my fists, my heart raced. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about a takeover. The moment I knew this wasn't just a wedding, I started seeing the cracks. It wasn't just Jason anymore. It was the entire Caldwell family, plotting, scheming, and using their influence to manipulate my family, our company, and, most importantly, me. I was on the edge of something I didn't want to admit. My instincts were screaming at me. I had to stop this. I couldn't let them take everything I had worked for, everything my father had built, and everything I had poured my heart and soul into. But how? The turning point came later that evening, when I was cornered by Vanessa in the garden. The party had moved inside, and the air was cool, the sound of music drifting from the ballroom. Vanessa, in her pristine white gown, approached me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Olivia, I've been thinking," she began, her voice saccharine sweet. "You've been such an asset to Matthew's Construction. You've done so much. But you know, there's a certain charm to being involved in the social side of things too. You should join us at more events. Get to know the right people. You never know what doors might open." I knew exactly what she was trying to do. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in taking control. She was positioning herself to secure everything for the Caldwells. And I was nothing more than an obstacle. "I'm fine where I am," I replied, my voice steady but my stomach churning. "Thanks for the suggestion." Though, her smile faltered just for a second. "Of course," she said, with a smile that was far too sharp. "Well, we'll see you at the wedding tomorrow. Don't forget to network." Olivia. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of it all finally hit me. They were plotting to take over everything, and I wasn't going to let it happen. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay, that I was just the responsible, behind-the-scenes worker bee. No, it was time to take back control. But here's where things got interesting. You know how the best-laid plans always have a way of unraveling? Well, mine were about to take a twist I hadn't seen coming. Next time, I'll tell you exactly how I turned the tables on Jason and the Caldwells, and how, in one move, I set everything in motion. You won't believe what happened next. The next few days, after the engagement party, felt like I was living in a storm cloud. Every time I tried to breathe, It felt like the air was thick with tension, manipulation, and deceit. The Caldwells were becoming more and more invasive. They weren't just trying to play nice with my family anymore. They were actively taking over. I couldn't ignore the warning signs anymore. Everything about this wedding was a setup. A carefully orchestrated move to solidify their place at the top of our family business. And they were using Jason as the pawn to do it. The way Jason had been acting lately, it was like he had already signed a contract with the Caldwells to hand over Matthew's construction to them. And it wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about power, influence, and the control they thought they could exert over me. But what really pushed me over the edge, it was when I saw the contract. It was the morning after the engagement party. I was sitting at my desk, the morning sun filtering through the blinds of my office, when I received an unexpected email. The subject line, Matthew's Construction, Caldwell Partnership Proposal. I clicked it, curiosity gnawing at me. But I didn't expect what I saw next. It was a draft of a partnership agreement between Matthew's Construction and Caldwell Properties. Jason had signed it. I stared at the screen in disbelief. My heart pounded. There was no mention of me in the document. No mention of my years of work. Not even a mention of my role as CFO. It was all about the Caldwells. And the way Jason had signed away the company's future made it seem like I wasn't even a part of the equation. It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. My first instinct was to grab the nearest thing I could throw, but I fought it back. I had spent years getting Matthew's Construction to where it was, and now I was staring at the paper that might tear it all away from me. I had to stop this. But how? The betrayal cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Henry, one of the few people I could still trust. Henry, I said, my voice low. I need your help. I've got something I need you to look at. A contract. It's time to play dirty. The plan starts to take shape. Later that afternoon, Henry arrived at my office. He was sharp, always impeccably dressed, but I could see the concern in his eyes when I handed him the document. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, which I appreciated. What exactly is this? Henry asked, looking up from the contract. It's a deal that Jason signed with the Caldwells without even consulting me, I said, my tone barely contained. It's a deal that gives them everything and leaves me with nothing. It's as if they're trying to take over the company without so much as a word to me. Henry scanned the document quickly, then looked back at me, his expression cold. This isn't just a bad deal, Olivia. This is a betrayal of your rights as part of this company. This can't stand. I know, I said, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. I've been running this company since I was 22, and now Jason's just handing it all away. The first step, exposing the lies. After Henry left, I sat there in my office for a while, the weight of everything sinking in. I couldn't just sit back and watch. I had to fight back. It wasn't just about money or business. It was about respect, something I hadn't had for me, as if I weren't even in the picture. I didn't just want to be vindicated. I wanted to expose everything. I wanted them to see me not as Jason's sister, the behind-the-scenes worker, but as someone who had built the foundation of this company with her blood, sweat, and tears. The plan started taking shape. I had the evidence. I had the emails, the contract, and I had Henry working with me. But I needed one more thing. I needed to confront Jason. The confrontation. The moment I stood up, the day came when I finally confronted Jason. I called him, my hands shaking slightly as I dialed his number. My mind was racing. This was it. The moment where everything would change. Jason, we need to talk, I said when he picked up. Now? I could hear him pause, his voice laced with that familiar arrogance. Olivia, what's the matter now? I know about the deal you signed with the Caldwells, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. And I'm done being ignored. Olivia, stop being so dramatic. Jason replied dismissively. You don't get it. Okay. This is a business decision, and it's a good one. You'll thank me later when you're not working 80-hour weeks. Thank me later. My pulse quickened. I felt the anger rise, but I refused to let it control me. No, Jason, you don't get it, I said, a sense of resolve filling me. This is my company, too, and I'm not going to sit here and let you hand it away to the Caldwells. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, finally, Jason spoke. Olivia, stop being so emotional. This is how the world works. You should be grateful we're even offering you a seat at the table. I was done being grateful. Done with the subtle jab, the condescending remarks. This wasn't just about business. This was about years of being pushed aside. Years of watching Jason get everything handed to him while I had to work for every inch. I'm done, I said, cutting him off. You think you're making the best decision for everyone? Well, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. It's time for you to see what it's like to be in the shadows for a change. The first move, exposing the deal. I knew what I had to do next. I had to take this to the board. I had to expose everything. I printed out the contract, the emails, everything. I was going to make sure they all knew what Jason had done, what the Caldwells had done. But as I was about to head out the door, something unexpected happened. A message pinged on my phone. It was from an unknown number. Olivia, I know what Jason has been planning. I have the proof you need. Meet me. I stood frozen, my phone still vibrating in my hand. The message sat there, taunting me with its simplicity. Olivia, I know what Jason has been planning. I have the proof you need. Meet me. Who could this person be? Someone who knew about the deal Jason had signed with the Caldwells. Someone who had been watching me all this time. My heart pounded in my chest. I'd been gathering evidence for weeks, but this felt like a turning point. Whoever this person was, they were offering me something I hadn't expected, proof that could finally shatter Jason's carefully constructed world. I had to meet them, but a part of me was hesitant. I didn't know who was behind that message, or if I could trust them. I had spent years in this business, always knowing who to trust and who to keep at arm's length. This was different, but I didn't have a choice. I couldn't sit back and wait anymore. Jason had already made his move, and now I was about to make mine. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, my mind racing. The plan I'd been working on for days was finally coming together. I could feel it. I wasn't just going to expose Jason. I was going to take back what was mine. The business, the respect, my place in this family. It was all on the line now. The mysterious meeting. I drove to the location in the message, a small coffee shop tucked away in a quiet part of town, far from the hustle and bustle of the city. The place had an old-school charm, dark wood tables, mismatched chairs, the faint smell of roasted coffee beans. It didn't feel like the kind of place where deals were made or lives were changed. But as I walked in, I realized just how wrong I was. I scanned the room, looking for any sign of the person who'd sent me the message. I had no idea what they looked like, but I knew they were expecting me. I felt out of place in this quiet, unassuming space, my heart racing in my chest as I tried to steady my breathing. And then I saw her, a woman sitting in the back corner of the cafe, her face partially obscured by a large pair of sunglasses. She had a calm, collected air about her, but something about her posture, her tense shoulders, the way her fingers nervously tapped on her coffee cup made it clear she was waiting for something, or someone. I approached cautiously, my hand still clutching my purse. She looked up when I got closer, her expression unreadable. "You must be Olivia," she said, her voice smooth but with a slight edge. "I'm glad you came." I didn't sit down immediately. Something about her felt off, but I pushed the unease aside. "What is this about?" I asked, my tone low but firm. "How do you know what Jason has been planning?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Let's just say I have access to certain information. Information that could be very helpful to you. You're about to get a front row seat to the destruction of your brother's perfect little world." My breath caught in my throat. "What do you mean? What do you know?" She paused, glancing around the room, as if ensuring no one was listening. "Jason's not just handing over Matthew's construction to the Caldwells, Olivia. He's taking it a step further. He's been working with them behind your back for months, planning to sell the company, sell it. Olivia. And you? You're being cut out of everything." My heart sank. I had suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed out loud made it feel real. My brother, my family, all conspiring behind my back. But there was more. She had more to say. "I've been keeping an eye on the situation," she continued, her voice steady. "I work with a lot of people in the business world, and I know exactly how the Caldwells operate. They're ruthless, and Jason is compromised. He's not just taking Matthew's construction for himself. He's being manipulated. The Caldwells have something on him. Something on him. What could they possibly have on my brother?" The idea of Jason being manipulated didn't sit right with me. He was always the one with the upper hand, the one who could talk circles around anyone. But this was different. I could feel the walls closing in. The ground beneath me felt unsteady. This wasn't just about a business deal anymore. It was about my brother's future, my family's future, and the truth that I was only beginning to uncover. "You're telling me Jason is being blackmailed?" I asked, the words tasting foreign on my tongue. The woman nodded, her fingers still tapping nervously. "Not exactly blackmailed, but there's leverage, something they can use to control him. And when that comes to light, it'll ruin him." I leaned forward, my voice barely a whisper. "What is it? What do they have on him?" She hesitated for a moment, then lowered her voice to match mine. "I don't have all the details, but I know it's something he's been trying to hide. Something to do with his personal life. It's bad." Olivia. Really bad. My mind was spinning. Jason had always been careful. He was too careful. He wouldn't let anything slip. Not with the stakes this high. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no way this was just about the company. There was something deeper at play. Something that could destroy Jason's world in an instant. A dangerous gamble. "So, what's your angle in all of this?" I asked, suspicion rising. "Why are you telling me all of this? What do you want in return?" The woman's eyes flickered for a moment. Then she leaned back in her chair, her fingers still tapping. "Let's just say I'm interested in seeing the Caldwells fall from grace. I want to see them lose everything, the way they've been playing everyone else for fools. And you, Olivia, you have the power to make that happen. You just need the right tools." "What do you mean?" "Tools," I asked, a sinking feeling creeping into my stomach. She slid a manila envelope across the table, her expression serious. "Everything you need is in there. The proof, the leverage, and a way to make sure Jason doesn't get away with this." I picked up the envelope, my hand shaking slightly as I opened it. Inside, there were several documents and photographs, some of which I recognized, some of which I didn't. But one photograph stood out among the rest. It was a picture of Jason with a woman I didn't recognize, standing together in a hotel lobby. looking far too comfortable. And the date on the back, 2 weeks ago. I stared at the photo, my mind racing. What was Jason hiding? Who was this woman? And how did the Caldwells have this information? Everything you need is there, the woman said, standing up. But be careful. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about making sure the truth comes out no matter the cost. The moment I stepped out of that coffee shop, the weight of everything felt heavier than ever. I clutched the manila envelope tightly in my hands, my knuckles white, my heart pounding in my chest. What I had just learned, the secrets that Jason was hiding, the leverage the Caldwells had over him, it was all too much to process in one go. But there was no turning back now. The game had changed. I couldn't shake the image of Jason's smiling face at the engagement party, the arrogance in his voice as he spoke about the future of Matthew's construction, as if it was his to take. He didn't even seem to care about the years I had put in, about the sacrifices, about the hard work. But that was about to change. The envelope in my hands wasn't just full of documents. It was my blueprint for revenge. And I was going to use it. The first move, building my case. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights dimmed. The only sound the soft hum of my laptop as it loaded the documents I had gathered over the past few days. The photos, the emails, the contract. It was all laid out before me like a map of my next move. But there was one thing I hadn't anticipated. The woman in the photo, the one with Jason in that hotel lobby. I clicked on the photo, zooming in on her face. She was young, blonde, with a look of someone who knew how to get what they wanted. And there was something about the way she stood with Jason close, too close, that made my skin crawl. Who was she? I scrolled through the rest of the evidence. There were more photos, this time of Jason and the woman, looking like they were more than just business associates. This was the leverage the Caldwells had over him. And now I had it too. I needed to figure out who she was, what her connection was to Jason, and how this could be used against him. I called Henry, my lawyer. Again. He picked up immediately, his voice calm but curious. Olivia, what's going on? I need you to dig into someone for me, I said, my voice low. I need you to find out who the woman is in these photos. Jason's been seeing her, and I need to know everything about her. Henry paused for a moment. Are you sure about this? You're already playing a dangerous game. Olivia, I don't care anymore. Henry, I replied, my voice steady. I've been playing by their rules for too long. It's time to play by mine. The plan takes shape. As the days passed, I became more and more consumed with the plan I was constructing. I knew the risks involved if I played my cards wrong. Everything could backfire. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I wasn't just going to take Jason down. I was going to take down the entire Caldwell empire. I had one goal now, to expose them all. Jason, the Caldwells, the lies, everything. I spent hours going over every document, every email, and every conversation I could find. I wasn't going to just show them the betrayal. I was going to show the world. But there was one thing I knew. I needed a public platform. I couldn't just confront Jason in private. I needed leverage. Something bigger. Something that would shake him and the Caldwells to their core. And then it hit me. The wedding. The wedding. The stage for the showdown. Jason's wedding to Vanessa was coming up, and I knew it was going to be the perfect opportunity. Not only would the Caldwells be there, but it would also be the perfect moment to expose everything. I had to be there. I had to be at the center of it all, ready to strike when the time was right. But this time, things were going to be different. I wasn't going to be the invisible sister sitting in the kitchen. No. I was going to take my rightful place at the table. And Jason wouldn't be able to ignore me this time. He wouldn't be able to brush me off. I was going to make sure of it. The big reveal. It was the night before the wedding, and I found myself sitting in front of the mirror, staring at my reflection. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was playing a supporting role. I wasn't the behind-the-scenes worker. I wasn't the invisible daughter. Tonight, I was going to be the center of attention, the one who controlled the narrative. I had my dress picked out black, sleek, bold. Everything about it screamed confidence. This wasn't the time for subtlety. I was going to make a statement. The plan was simple. I would attend the wedding, sit in the front row, and when the moment was right, I would drop the bomb. The world would know the truth about Jason, about the Caldwells, about everything. I had already sent the invitation back, confirming my attendance. But it wasn't just about showing up. It was about showing everyone just how far I was willing to go. I couldn't let them think for a second that I was afraid. The night before the wedding, I received a text from Henry. "I've got the information on the woman," he said. "Her name is Kara Daniels. She's a consultant for Caldwell Properties, but it seems like her involvement with Jason is more than just business. I'm sending you the full report now." I opened the report on my phone, my pulse quickening as I read. Kara Daniels. She had been with Jason for over a year. And, from the looks of it, their relationship wasn't just about business meetings. Jason had been seeing her behind closed doors, and the Caldwells were using this affair to control him. I gritted my teeth. This was worse than I thought. But it also gave me the ammunition I needed. The wedding day. The day of the wedding arrived. And as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of my dress, I knew there was no turning back. I wasn't just Olivia Matthews anymore. I was a woman with a plan. A woman who had everything to lose and everything to gain. The church was magnificent chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The marble floors gleamed under the bright lights, and every detail was perfect, just like Jason wanted it. But I didn't care about the grandeur of the event. I cared about one thing, making sure that Jason and the Caldwells would regret the day they ever underestimated me. I walked into the church with my head held high, the eyes of the guests following me as I took my seat at the front, next to the family. Jason and Vanessa stood at the altar, smiling for the cameras, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. The ceremony began. But I couldn't stop thinking about the moment that was coming, the moment when everything would change. The church was quiet, almost serene, as Jason and Vanessa stood at the altar, ready to seal their fate with vows and promises. The guests were enraptured, waiting for the moment to unfold. No one knew the storm that was brewing just beneath the surface. I sat there, my hands trembling in my lap, the envelope from the coffee shop burning a hole in my purse. This was the moment when everything would change. I had planned for this. The perfect revelation, the perfect timing. But then, just as the priest began speaking, something unexpected happened. The twist. A new player, entering the scene. It was a soft tap on my shoulder. So soft. I almost thought it was a figment of my imagination. I turned around slowly, expecting it to be someone from my family. Maybe my mother with her usual disapproving look, or Jason with his smug, "We need to talk." But when I looked up, my stomach dropped. It was Kara Daniels. I froze, a knot tightening in my chest. The woman I had been investigating, the one I had discovered was tangled in Jason's web, was standing behind me in the church. She was dressed in a simple but elegant dress, her blonde hair cascading perfectly over her shoulders. She smiled at me, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was knowing. I stood up slowly, my mind racing. What was she doing here? Why had she come to the wedding? And more importantly, Why was she here? Now, I think we need to talk, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft hum of the ceremony. In private. I glanced back at the altar. Jason and Vanessa were caught in the moment, too absorbed in the ceremony to notice the tension unfolding behind them. I didn't know what to do. My plan was slipping out of my control. But I knew one thing: I couldn't let this moment pass without finding out what Kara was really after. The confrontation. A deal with the devil. We slipped out of the church, into the quiet garden behind it, away from the eyes of the guests. The scent of fresh flowers filled the air, and the soft rustling of the leaves in the trees seemed like a distant memory to me. All I could focus on was Kara. She was standing there, calm, collected, but there was something cold in her eyes, a sharpness I hadn't seen before. You're the one who's been digging into Jason's life, aren't you? Kara said, her voice low. I figured it wouldn't take long for you to catch on. I crossed my arms, trying to keep my composure. What do you want? Kara, you've been playing both sides. First with Jason, and now with the Caldwells. What's your game? She smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm not playing both sides. I'm simply protecting my interests. You see? Olivia, this isn't just about Jason. It's about power, control. The Caldwells have it, and they've been using it to manipulate everything and everyone, including you. I was silent for a moment, processing what she was saying. I thought I had everything figured out. I thought the Caldwells were the ones pulling the strings. But now, Kara was suggesting something bigger, something more insidious. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice steady but wary. You could have stayed in the shadows. Let Jason and the Caldwells do whatever they wanted. Why come to me now? Kara took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. Because I'm tired of being a pawn in their game. They think they can control everything, but they underestimated you. Olivia, you're smarter than they give you credit for. You see the cracks. You know something's wrong. And right now, you're the only one who can stop them. My heart raced. She was offering me something I hadn't expected. She wasn't just here to expose Jason. She was here to offer me an alliance. But I couldn't trust her. I couldn't trust anyone in this game anymore. Why would I trust you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You've been working with them all along. What makes you think I'm just going to take your word for it? She took a deep breath, as if trying to collect her thoughts. Because you're the only one who can take them down. And I've got the information that can help you do it. The Caldwells aren't what they seem. I've seen what they're capable of. I hesitated. The tension in the air between us was thick, but my mind was already racing. Could I trust her? Could I use her information to finally destroy Jason and the Caldwells for good? Before I could speak, Kara continued, her voice low but insistent. Jason's not the only one with secrets. The Caldwells have been running things for a long time, and they've got dirt on everyone. But they made one mistake underestimating you. The offer. A dangerous path. I'm offering you a chance. Olivia, Kara said, her tone turning more serious. A chance to expose everything. To make sure the Caldwells and Jason don't get away with this. But you have to act quickly. If you wait too long, they'll tighten their grip on Matthew's construction. And it'll be too late. I was still processing everything she was saying. But then, something shifted in me. Something clicked. If everything she was saying was true, and I had no reason to doubt her now, then the stakes had just gotten higher. I had no choice. If I wanted to protect my family's legacy, if I wanted to take back what was rightfully mine, I had to work with her, even if it meant trusting a snake. Fine, I said, my voice hard. What's the plan? Kara's smile grew wider. But it wasn't a smile of friendship. It was a smile of someone who knew they had control. We take them down. Together. The plan. Setting the trap. Over the next few days, Kara and I met in secret, planning our next move. We dug into the Caldwell's operations, their finances, and the connections they had in the business world. The more we uncovered, the more I realized how deep the web went. The Caldwells weren't just trying to take Matthew's construction, they were trying to wipe out everything my family had worked for. But we were going to expose them. All of them. Kara had one final piece of the puzzle, an email thread between Richard Caldwell and Jason that would destroy any chance they had of getting away with this. It was the smoking gun we needed. And I knew, once we exposed it, there would be no turning back. The night was drawing to a close, but the storm inside me was only beginning to build. I had spent months gathering the pieces of the puzzle, each piece more damning than the last. And now I stood at the precipice of everything. The truth was in my hands, the culmination of everything I had fought for, everything I had sacrificed, but nothing could have prepared me for the final twist that would turn this entire war upside down. I had arrived at the wedding, ready to make my move, to expose Jason, the Caldwells, the lies. I had everything, every document, every photo, every email. And yet, I was standing at the altar of betrayal once more, watching as my family unknowingly prepared to witness the collapse of their perfect world. I thought I had a clear plan. I thought I knew how everything would unfold. I'd step forward, drop the bomb, watch their lives shatter as the truth about Jason's affair and his betrayal came to light. But nothing went as I expected. As the ceremony reached its peak, I felt the atmosphere in the room change. The tension that had been building, the low hum of nervous energy, it all intensified. I could see Jason fidgeting, his fingers tapping nervously against his tuxedo jacket. He wasn't as composed as he seemed. The priest, oblivious to the storm I had set in motion, continued with the vows. Vanessa's voice was soft and sweet as she repeated the words of commitment. But I couldn't focus on that anymore. All I could think about was the email I had in my hand, the one that would bring everything crashing down. And then, as if the universe had planned it to perfection, the unexpected happened. Jason wasn't the one to betray me. I was the one betrayed. I looked to the back of the room, my heart leaping in my chest as a figure appeared in the doorway. It was my mother. Her expression was not one of a proud mother walking her son down the aisle, but something different, something I couldn't quite place. She moved quickly, deliberately, toward me. Her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity I had never seen before. I felt my stomach drop. It wasn't just the look on her face. It was the way she held herself. There was something hidden in her posture. Something I hadn't noticed until it was too late. She was the one who betrayed me. The revelation. The true puppeteer. I watched as my mother walked toward me. Not a hint of the usual warmth in her gaze. She didn't stop to talk to anyone else. She didn't even acknowledge Jason as he turned, his eyes wide in confusion. "Olivia," she whispered, her voice low but urgent. "You need to stop this." The words hit me like a slap. "Stop what?" "Mom," I demanded, my voice barely controlled. "You know what Jason has done? What the Caldwells are doing. This is my moment. My chance to take control of everything. Olivia, it's not just Jason and the Caldwells," she said, her voice trembling. It's all of us. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This is bigger than just family." I stepped back, confused, shaking my head. "What are you talking about? What's bigger than all of this?" Her eyes darkened, and I saw something flicker behind them. A secret I had never imagined. "I'm the one who's been pulling the strings." I have been working with the Caldwells all along. I've known everything. I made Jason do this. The world around me spun. My mother, my own mother, had been manipulating me from the start. She had used me as a pawn in her own game to make sure Jason stayed in the family's good graces. I had always thought I was the one fighting for the truth. But now, I realized that I had been nothing more than a tool. I felt the weight of her words crash into me. My mind raced, my heart pounding in my ears. "You used me," I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips. "All this time, you were working with them. You let me fight for something you already knew was lost." My mother's face softened for just a second, and then she sighed. "I never wanted it to be like this, Olivia. I just wanted to keep the family together. Jason was always the favorite. But you were the one who always got it done. You're the reason Matthew's construction didn't fall apart after the divorce. But I had to protect Jason. I couldn't let you take that away from him." The betrayal unfolds. My mind was spinning. All the years of hard work, all the sacrifices I had made, everything I had done to keep this family together, it had all been part of my mother's plan to protect Jason. She didn't care about me. Not really. She cared about the family image, about keeping the business intact for Jason. You used me," I repeated, louder this time, as if hearing it would make it clearer. "I'm sorry, Olivia," she said, her voice small, almost childlike. "But it's too late. Everything is in motion now. There's no going back." I could barely breathe. Everything I had done, everything I had fought for, it was all just a game to my mother. I wasn't just fighting for my place in the family. I had been fighting against a system designed to make sure I would never win. And now, I was facing the biggest betrayal of all. The person I trusted most, the one who should have had my back, had been playing me from the start. The choice, fight or let go. I stood there, my mind reeling, my chest tight with emotion. The church was silent around me, but inside, my heart was pounding like a drumbeat. I had the power to expose Jason. I had everything: proof, the truth, and the leverage I needed to destroy him. But now, the truth had shifted. It wasn't just about Jason anymore. It was about my mother, my family, and everything I had ever believed in. Could I still fight this battle, knowing that my own blood had betrayed me? I looked around at the wedding guests, at Jason standing at the altar, his face a mask of confusion. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know how everything he had worked for, everything he had taken for granted, was about to be destroyed. But I had to make a choice. Did I expose the Caldwells? Destroy Jason's life and take back what was mine? Or did I let it all go? Walk away from this war and leave the family that had never truly accepted me behind? The final decision hung in the air like a thick fog, and everything I had worked for, everything I had fought against, seemed to be shifting right before my eyes. I could feel the weight of my mother's betrayal pressing on my chest, a constant reminder of just how deeply everything I had trusted had been manipulated. Yet, in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about Matthew's construction. This wasn't about the business, the power, or the revenge I had been chasing for so long. It was about my own self-worth, about how far I was willing to go to prove that I was enough, even if the world had always overlooked me. I stood there, looking at Jason, my brother, who had taken everything from me. Not by choice, but because he had been controlled by the same forces that had taken control of me. I saw the fear in his eyes, the confusion, but more importantly, I saw his vulnerability. And in that moment, I realized that no one was untouchable. No one was truly in control. As the ceremony continued, I could feel the eyes of everyone on me. My mother's eyes were pleading. But I knew she was just as trapped as I was. She had always played the role of the dutiful mother, but in reality, she had been hiding behind the same mask I had worn for so long. A mask that said, "Everything is fine," when underneath it, everything was falling apart. But I had to make my choice. I looked at my mother one last time. "You never thought I'd find out." "Did you?" I whispered. But she didn't respond. Her silence was all I needed to hear. She had never believed I would fight back. But now, I was more determined than ever, turning away from her. I walked up to Jason at the altar. I could hear the gasps from the guests, the murmur of voices rising as I made my way to him. The truth was in my hands now, and I had to make sure it reached the right people. Jason looked at me, his face pale. "Liv, what are you doing?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the quiet. "I'm doing what I should have done a long time ago," I said, holding up the envelope, the proof of everything, the evidence that had been carefully hidden from me, the blackmail, the betrayal, the lies. "This is over." I handed it to the priest, who, after a stunned silence, slowly began to read the documents aloud. The room fell into a dead silence, the air thick with the weight of the truth. As the documents were read, I saw the realization sink into everyone's faces, the Caldwells, my family, Jason. The truth was out, and there was no going back. In that moment, I realized something. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to destroy Jason or my mother. I didn't need to tear everything down. What I needed was freedom from their expectations, from their manipulation, from the lies I had lived for so long. Jason stood frozen, unable to say a word, his eyes flicking back and forth between the document and me. The room was still, and for the first time in a long while, I felt at peace. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The media got hold of the story, and the truth about the Caldwells, Jason, and the family's dirty dealings spread faster than I could have ever imagined. Matthew's construction became the center of attention, but not for the reasons Jason had hoped. The Caldwells were exposed for their manipulative tactics, and Jason's role in the conspiracy was made public. As for me, I took a step back from the business. It wasn't about the company anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. I didn't need to destroy everything. I just needed to rebuild myself. I didn't need revenge. What I needed was the freedom to live life on my own terms. Jason reached out to me once, but I didn't respond. I knew the world had changed, and we were no longer the family we once were. I wasn't sure what would happen to him, to the Caldwells, or to the company. But I knew one thing. I had found my own path. And as for my mother, she never apologized. But I didn't need her apology. I had my own peace now. In the end, the greatest revenge wasn't about tearing them down. It was about rising above, living on my own terms, and walking away from the chains of a family that never saw me for who I truly was. I had finally freed myself from their grip. And that, to me, was enough. If you've been following Olivia's journey from betrayal to self-discovery, you know how powerful taking control of your own story can be. But what about you? Have you ever been overlooked or underestimated? What would you do if you were in Olivia's shoes? Drop a comment below and let me know how you would handle a betrayal like this. If you've enjoyed this roller coaster of emotions and twists, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update on the latest stories of triumph, revenge, and self-empowerment. And remember, the journey doesn't stop here. If you're ready to start reclaiming your own life, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. You're never alone in the fight for respect. And sometimes, the biggest victory is simply standing up for yourself. See you in the next one. Stay strong.